So then, guys, I have came back on the third part of reading The Sheep Pig by Dickens Smith. Since I have done two parts of reading The Sheep Pig, which was adapted into film of Babe in 1995. So, perhaps you have learnt about the sheep pig, Babe the Sheep Pig in the Hogget Farm. It has to learn about herding the sheep trial. So I'm going to continue the story of the sheep pig on the third part. But I'm going to continue through on page 60. Since I have read the first 6 chapters of the sheep pig. Okay, so let's move on to third part, and then we're going to continue with the story. Let's find out more about the sheep pig. A look of a pure contentment passed over the faces of a flock, and with one accord they turned and walked across the paddock. Babe a few paces in the rear. Sedately they walked, and steadily either to the corner, through the gate into the pen, and then stood quietly waiting. No one broke ranks or tried to slip away, and no one pushed or shoved. There was no noise or fuss. From the oldest to the youngest, they went in like lambs. Then, at last, the gentle murmur broke out, as everyone in different ways quietly expressed their pleasure. Babe said to the pig, "That's quite bravely done, dear." "Thank you so much," said Babe to the sheep. "You did that so nicely." "Ta," said the sheep. "Ta, ta, 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 ta. 'Tis the pleasure to work for such a little gentleman." And Maud added, "You make a wonderful sheep pig, young'un. My name's not Ma." As for Farmer Hogget, he heard none of this, so wrapped up was he in his own thoughts. He's as good as a dog, he told himself excitedly. He's better than a dog, than any dog, I wonder. "Good pig," he said. Then he uncrossed his fingers and closed the gate. Every day after that, of course, Babe went the rounds with Farmer Hogget and Fly. At first, the farmer worried about using the pig to herd the sheep, not because it was a strange, unusual thing to do which people might laugh at. He did not care about that, but because he was afraid it might upset Fly and put her nose out of joint. However, it did not seem to do so. He could have spared himself the worry if he had been able to listen to their conversation. "That was fun," said Babe to Fly that evening. "I wonder if the boss will let me to do some more work." "I'm sure he will, dear. You did it so well." It was almost as though the sheep knew exactly it was you wanted them to do. But that's just it. Ask them. No use asking sheep anything, dear," interrupted Fly. "You have to make them do what you want." "I've told you before." "Yes, Mum, but would you mind if the boss used me instead of you sometimes?" "Mind?" said Fly. "You bet your trotters I want. All my life I've had to run after the first idiots uphill, down dale, day in and day out. And as for sometimes, as far as I am concerned, you can work them every day. Not as young as I was. I'll be only too happy to lie comfortably in the grass and watch you, my babe." And before long, that was exactly what it was doing. Once Farmer Hogget could see by her wagging tail and smiling eyes that she was perfectly happy about it. He began to use Babe to do some of her work. At first, he only gave the pig simple tasks, but as the days and weeks went by, Hogget began to make more and more use of his new helper. The speed with which Babe had learned amazed him, and before long he was relying on him for the work with the flock, while Fly lay and proudly watched, and now there was nothing, it seemed, that the pig could not do, and do falselessly. At that, he obeyed all of the usual commands immediately correctly. He could fetch sheep, or tell and take them away, move them to left or right, persuade them around obstacles or through gaps, cut a flock in half, or take out one individual. To Drenchmar, for instance, there was no need for Hogget to bring all the sheep down to the collecting point, or to corner them and catch her by hind leg was his crook. He could simply point her out to the pig, and Babe would gently work her out of a bunch and bring her right to the farmer's feet, where he stood quietly waiting. It seemed like a miracle to Hogget, but of course it was simple. Ma, yes, young'un, the boss wants to give you some more medicine. Oh, not again. 'Tis horrible stuff that, but it'll make you cough better. Oh, come along, Ma, please. All right then, young'un, everything to do but legislate you. And there were other, far more miraculous things that Babe could easily have done if the farmer had only known. For example, when it was a time for the ewes to be separated from the lambs, now almost as big and strong as their mothers, Farmer Hogget behaved like any other shepherd and brought the whole flock down to the pens, and took a lot of time and trouble to part them. If he had been able to explain things to Babe, how easy as it could have been. Dear ladies, will you please stay on the hill if you be so kind? Youngsters, do you go to the collecting pen, if you please? There's good boys and girls, and it could have been done in a shake of a lamb's tail. However, Babe's increasing skill at working sheep determined Farmer Hogget to take the next step in the plan, which had begun to form in his mind on the day when the piglet had first penned the sheep. That step was nothing less than to take Pig with him to a local sheepdog trials in a couple of weeks' time, only just to watch. Of course, just so that he could have a look at well-trained dogs working at the small numbers of sheep, and see what they and the handlers were required to do. And I'm daft, he thought, grinning to himself. He did not tell his wife. Before the day came, he put the collar and led on the pig. He could not risk him running away in a strange place. He kept him on the lead all one morning, letting Fly do the work as of old. He need not have bothered. Babe would have stayed tied and at heel when he went old, but it was interesting to note the instant change in the atmosphere as the collie ran out. "Woof, woof!" cried the flock. every sheep immediately on edge. Move, fools, snapped Fly, and she hustled them and bustled them with little regard for their feelings. Babe, we want Babe, they bleated. Barbie. To be sure, the work was done more quickly, but at the end of it the sheep were in fear and trembling, and the dog out of patience and breath. Steady, steady, called the farmer a number of times, something he had never had to say to Babe. When the day came for the local trials, Farmer Hogget set off early in the Land Rover, Fly and Babe in the back. He told his wife where he was going, though not that he was taking the pig, nor did he say that he did not intend to be an ordinary spectator, but instead one of the spy to see without being seen. He wanted Pig to observe everything that he went on without being spotted. Now they had settled on the final daring part of his plan. Hogget realised that secrecy was all important. No one must know that he had owned a what would you call him thought a sheep pig, I suppose. A trials took place 10 miles or so away in the curved bison-shaped valley in the hills, and at the lower ends of the bison was a road. Close to this, a starting point where the dogs would began their outran, and also the enclosure where they would finally pen their sheep down there, or the spectators would gather. Farmer Hogget, arriving some time before them, parked the Land Rover in the lane, and set off up the hill valley by the roundabout way, keep it in the shelter of the bordering woods. Fly padding behind him, and Babe on the lead, trotting to keep up with his long strides. "Where are we going, Mum?" said Babe excitedly. "What are we going to do?" "I don't think we're going to do anything, dear," said Fly. "I think the boss wants you to see something." "What?" They had reached the head of the valley now, and the farmer found a suitable place to stop. Under cover, but with a good view of the course. "Down, Fly, down, Pig, and stay," he said, exhausted by this long speech. Stretch his long frame on the ground and settled down to wait. "Wants me to see what?" said Babe. "The trials." "What's trials?" "Well," said Fly, "it's a sort of competition for the sheep dogs and their bosses. Each dog has to fetch 5 sheep and move them through the numbers of gaps and gateways. You can see which ones that have got flags on either side, down to that circle that's marked out in the field right at the bottom, and there the dog has to shed some sheep." "What's shed mean?" "Separate them out of the rest. The ones to be shed have collars on." And then what?" "Then the dog has to gather on them all again and pen them." "Is that all?" It's not easy, dear. Not like moving that bunch of woolly fools of ours up and down the field. It all has to be done quickly, without any mistakes. You lose points if you make mistakes." "Have you ever been in a trial, Mum?" "Yes, here, when I was younger." "Did you make any mistakes?" "Of course," said Fly. Everyone does. It's very difficult working a small numbers of strange sheep. In a strange country, you'll see. By the end of the day, Babe had seen a great deal. The course was not an easy one, and the sheep were very different from those at home. They were fast and wild, and good though the dogs were. There were many mistakes made at the gates, in the shedding ring, and the final penning. Babe watched everyone intently, and Hogget watched Babe, and Fly watched them both. What's the boss up to? She thought, as they drove home. He's surely never thinking that one day Babe might. No, he couldn't be that daft. Sheep pig, indeed. All right for the little chap to run our place for a bit of fun, but to think of him competing in trials, even a little local one like today's. Well, really, she remembered something he had said in his early duck herding days. I suppose she had say, she remarked, that those dogs just weren't polite enough. That's right, said Babe. My suspicions about what the farmer was up to grew rapidly over the next weeks. It soon became obvious to her that he was constructing on his own land a practice course from the top of the field, where the wrestler had come. The circuit, which had laid out, ran all round the farm, studded with the hazards to be negotiated. Some were exciting gateways or gaps. Some he made, with hurdles or lines of posts between which the sheep had to be driven. Some were extremely difficult. One, for example, a plank bridge over the stream, was so narrow that he could only be crossed in single file, and a most honeyed words were needed from Babe to persuade the animals to cross. Then, in the home paddock, Hogget made a rough shading ring with a circle of large stones, and beyond it, a final pen, a small hurdle, enclosure no bigger than a tiny room, with a gate to close its mouth when he pulled on the rope. Every day, the farmer would send Fly to cut out 5 sheep from the flock and take them to the top of the hill and hold them there. Then, starting Babe from a gate at the lower end of the farmyard, Hogget would send him away to run them through the course. "Away to me, pig," he would say. "Oh, come by, pig," and off Babe would scamper as fast as his trotters could carry him. As the farmer pulled out his big old pocket watch and noted the time, there was only one problem: his trotters wouldn't carry him all that fast. Here at home, Fly realised his lack of speed didn't matter much. Whichever 5 sheep were selected were only too anxious to oblige Babe, and would hurry eagerly to do whatever he wanted. But with strange sheep it will be different, though, thought Fly. If the boss really does intend to run him in the trial, which it looks as though he does, she wanted his tumbly, pinky white shape as he crested the hill. That evening, at the supper time, she watched again as he tucked into his food. Up till now it had never worried her how much he ate. He's a growing boy, she had thought fondly. Now she thought, he's a greedy boy too, babe, she said, as with a grunt of content he licked the last muzzles off the end of his knot. His little tin trough was shiningly clean as for Mrs. Hogget had washed it in her sink, and his tummy was tight as a drum. Yes, Mum, you like being a sheep pig, don't you? Oh, yes, Mum, and you like to be really good at it, wouldn't you? The greatest, better than any other sheep pig. Do you think there are any others? Well, no. Better than any sheep dog, then. Oh, yes, I'd love to be, but I don't really think that's possible, you see. Although sheep do seem to go very well for me, and do what I ask. I mean, do what I tell them. I'm nothing like as fast as a dog, and never could be. No, but could you be a jolly sight faster than you are? How? Well, there are two things you have to do, dear, said Fly. First, you have to go into the proper training. One little run around a day's not enough. You have to practice hard. Juggling, cross-country running, sprinting, distance work. I'd help you, of course. It all sounded fun to Babe. Great, he said, but you said two things. What's a second? Eat less, said Fly. You have to go on a diet. Any ordinary pig would have rebelled at this point. Pigs enjoy eating, and they also enjoy lying around almost of a day thinking about eating again. But Babe was no ordinary pig, and he set out enthusiastically to do what I suggest. Under her watchful eye, he ate wisely, but not too well, and every afternoon he trained to a program which she had worked out, trotting right round the boundaries of a farm perhaps, or running up to the top of a hill and back again, or racing up and down the home paddock. A Hogget thought the pig was just playing, but he couldn't help noticing how he had grown, not fatter, as a sty kept pig would have done, but stronger and wirer. There was nothing of a piglet about him any more. He looked lean and racy and hard-muscled, and he was now almost as big as the sheep he herded. And the day came when that strength and hardness were to stand him in a good stead. One beautiful morning, when the sky was clear and cloudless, and the air was so crisp and fresh that you could almost taste it, Babe woke feeling on the top of the world, like the trained athlete. He felt so charged with energy that he simply couldn't keep still. He bounced about the stable floor on the all 4 feet, shaking his head about, uttering a series of short, sharp squeaks. You are full of it this morning, said Fly with a yawn. You'd better run to the top of the hill and back to work it off. Okay, Mum, said Babe, and off he shot while Fly settled comfortably back in the straw. Dashing across the home paddock, Babe bounded up the hill and looked about for the sheep, though he knew he would see them later on. He felt so pleased with life that he thought he would like to share that feeling with Ma and all the others. Before he ran home again, just to say, "Hello, good morning, everybody. Isn't it a lovely day?" There were, he knew, in the most distant of the fields on the farm, right away up to at the top of a lane. He looked across, expecting that he would be grazing quite quietly, or laying comfortably and cuddling in the morning sun, only to see them galloping madly in every direction. On the breeze came cries of wolf, but not in the usual bored, almost automatic tones of complaint that they used when Fly worked them. They were yells of a real terror and desperate calls for help. As he watched, the two other animals came in sight, one large and one small, and he heard the sound of barking and yapping as they dashed about after fleeing sheep. "You get some wolves as I'll chase sheep and kill them." Ma's exact words come back to Babe, and without a second thought, he set off as fast as he could go in the direction of the noise. What a sight greeted him when he arrived in the far field, the flock usually so tightly bunched was scattered everywhere, his eyes bulging, mouths open, heads hanging in for evident distress, and it was clear that the dogs had been at their worrying for some time. A few sheep had tried in their terror to jump the wire fencing and had become caught up in it. Some had fallen into the ditches and got stuck. Some were limping as they ran about, and on the grass were limps of wool torn from others. What most dreadful of all, in the middle of the field, the warriors had brought down the owl, which lay on his side feebly, kicking at them as they growled and tugged at it. On the day then the rustlers had come, Babe had felt a mixture of fear and anger. Now he knew nothing but a blind rage. He charged flat out of the two dogs, grunting and snorting with fury. Nearest to him was a smaller dog, a kind of mongrel terrier, which was snapping at one of the owl's hind legs, deaf to everything in excitement of a worry. Before it could move, Babe took across the back and flung it to the one side, and the force of his rush carried him on into the bigger dog and knocked it flying. This one, a large black crossbred pot collie retriever, was made of a sterner stuff than a terrier, which was already running dazedly away, and it picked itself up and came snarling back at the pig. Perhaps in the confusion of a moment it thought that this was just another sheep, that it had somehow found courage to attack it, but if so, it soon knew better as it come on. Babe chopped at it with his terrible pig's bite, the bite that grips and tears, and now it was not sheep's blood that was spilled. Howling in pain, the black dog turned and ran, his tail between his legs. He ran, in fact, for his life. An open-mouthed, bristling pig hard on his heels. The field was clear, and Babe suddenly came back to his sense. He turned and hurried to the fallen oe, round whom now the dogs had gone. The top of a horrified flock was beginning to gather in a rough circle. She lay still now, as Babe stood, panting by her side. A draggled side where the warriors had pulled at it, and suddenly he realized it was Ma. Ma, he cried. Ma, are you all right? She did not seem too badly hurt. He could not see any gaping wounds. Though blood was coming from one ear where the dog had bitten it. The old R opened an eye. Her voice, when she spoke, was as hers as ever, but now not much more than a whisper. Hello, young'un, she said. Babe dropped his head and gently licked the ear to try to stop the bleeding, and some blood stuck into his snout. Can you get up? He asked. For some time Ma did not answer. He looked anxiously at her, but the eye that he could see was still open. I reckon, she said. Is it right, Ma? But Babe said. The wolves have gone far away. Far, far away. Chorused the flock, and Fly and the boss will soon be here to look after you. Ma had no answer or movement. Only her ribs jumped to the thump of her tired old heart. You'll be all right, honestly, you will, said Babe. Oh, said Ma. And then the eye closed, and the ribs jumped no more. Oh, Ma, said Babe, and Ma, mourned the flock. As the landwiver came up the lane, Farmer Hogget had heard nothing of the worrying. The field was too far away, the wind in the wrong direction, but he had been anxious, and so by now had Fly, because Pig was nowhere to be found. The moment they entered the field, both man and dog could see that something was terribly wrong. Why else was a flock so obviously distressed, panting and gasping and dishevelled? Why had they formed that ragged circle, and what was in the middle of it? Farmer Hogget strode forward, Fly before him, parting a wing to make way, only to see the sight that struck horror into the hearts of both. There before them lay a dead oe, and bending over it was a pig, his snout almost touching the outstretched neck, a snout they saw that was stained with blood. Go home, Pig, said Farmer Hogget in a voice that was so quiet and cold that Babe hardly recognised it. Bewildered, he trotted off obediently, while behind him the farmer picked up the dead oe and carried it to the landwiver. Then, with Fly's help, he began the task of rescuing the sheep that were caught or stuck, and of making sure that no other were badly hurt. This done, he left Fly to guard the flock and drive home. Back at the farm, Babe felt simply very, very sad. The sky was still cloudless, the air still crisp, but this was a very different pig from the other they had cantered carefree up the hill not half an hour ago. In those 30 minutes, he had seen naked fear and cruelty and death, and now, to cap it all, the boss was very angry with him, had sent him home in sort of disgrace. What had he done wrong? He had only done his duty as a good sheep pig should. He sat in the doorway of the stables and watched as the Land Rover drove into the yard. Poor Ma's head lolling loosely over the back. He saw the boss get out and go into the house, and then, a few minutes later, come out again, carrying something in a crook. Off one arm, a long thing of a kind of a black shiny tube, and walked towards him. "Come, pig," said Farmer Hogget in the same cold voice, and strode past him into the stables, while at the same moment, inside the farmhouse, the telephone began to ring, and stopped as Mrs. Hogget picked it up. Obediently, Babe followed the farmer into the dark interior. It was not so dark, however, that he could not see clearly that the boss was pointing at the black shiny tube at him. And he sat down again and waited, supposing that perhaps it was some machine was giving out food, and that some quite unexpected surprise would come out of his two small round mouths, held not quite close to his face. At that instant, Mrs. Hogget's voice sounded across the yard, calling her husband's name from the open kitchen window. He frowned, lowered the shiny tube, and poked his head around stable door. "Oh, there you are," called Mrs. Hogget. "What does think them?" That was the police. That was them ringing every farmer in the district to warn them. "There's a sheep running dogs about. They killed 6 sheep at other side of the valley only last night. They've been seen. They have. 2 of them. 'Tis a big black un and a little brown un. They say to shoot on sight if you do see them. You better get back up the hill and make sure ours is all right." "Do you want me to fetch your gun?" "No," said Farmer Hogget. "It's all right," he said. He waited till his wife had shut the window and disappeared, and then he walked out into the sunlight with Babe following. "See, Peg," he said, but now his voice was warm and kindly again. He looked closely at the trusting face turned up to his, and saw, sticking to the side of her Babe's mouth, some hairs, and some black hairs, and a few brown ones too. Okay, so I'm going to stop there on page 392. We're almost unfinished the story about the sheep pig. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the story of The Sheep Pig, written by Dickon Smith. So I think it's a very interesting story about Babe, the sheep pig. So I'm glad you liked this story. Okay, so we're going to stop there. We will continue on the final 4th part of The Sheep Pig. I hope you see you soon, and I'll see you on the next video, and I'll see you soon.